John Forbes Nash Jr. is one of the most brilliant mathematicians of the 20th century. His work in the area of game theory and partial differential equations provided tremendous insight into the forces that govern chance and events inside daily life. Sadly, Nash developed schizophrenia in his 30s. This condition took over his life for over 3 decades. Miraculously, he overcame his symptoms and went on to win the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences in 1994. His tremendous story began in Bluefield, West Virginia, where he was born on June 13, 1928. Bluefield was a former coal town nestled in the Appalachian Mountains. As a child, Nash was very introverted and quiet. His mother was a former teacher and pushed her son to read at age 4, learn Latin, and skip a grade in school. John Nash's first hint of math talent came in 4th grade when his teacher told his mother that he couldn't do math. His mother found this humorous, well aware that her son was going down his own path to solve the problems. When Nash reached high school, he solved teachers' tough math proofs in a few simple steps. His math skills were so superb that he was one of the 10 students in the nation to be awarded the George Westinghouse Award, which provided him with a full scholarship to the Carnegie Institute of Technology. Nash was later accepted to Princeton University for graduate school. This is where he found himself obsessed with game theory, which describes strategies of competition. The doctoral thesis he produced would eventually reorient the whole field of economics. Following graduate school in 1951, Nash took a job as a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He did not create a very positive reputation among his colleagues. He was described as brash, selfish, and extremely egocentric. Nonetheless, his colleagues respected him for the tremendous mathematical ability that he had. Soon after arriving at MIT, Nash met a 21-year-old El Salvadorian physics major named Alicia Lourdes. In 1957, Nash proposed to her, and they were married. The following year, at age 30, Nash was named as one of the brightest mathematicians in the world by Fortune magazine. The year of 1959 proved to be a very difficult year for Nash. This is when his symptoms of schizophrenia began. He was having hallucinations of strange men that he believed were communists plotting against him. He believed these men were sending him encrypted messages in newspaper articles. His behavior became very erratic. He would write letters to embassies in Washington, D.C., warning them of the situation. In May of 1959, he was involuntarily admitted to McLean Hospital for a 50-day observational period. After his release, he went to Europe for 2 years. He was in a constant psychosis during his time away from the United States. When he returned, his schizophrenia became worse. He was admitted to Trenton State Hospital in 1961. There, he endured insulin coma therapy, or ICT, for 5 days a week for 7 weeks. This is a very aggressive and risky treatment. ICT is a form of psychiatric treatment in which patients were repeatedly injected with large doses of insulin, which produces daily comas. Each coma would last for up to an hour. Seizures often occurred before or during the coma. This process was very taxing on Nash, and after his treatment, he was discharged from the hospital. His condition seemed to be getting a little bit better. But John and Alicia got a divorce in 1962. Nash did get a job at Brandeis University, thanks to his former colleagues. There was one condition to the job. Nash had to meet with a psychiatrist who later would prescribe him antipsychotic medication. This optimistic time did not last long. Soon Nash stopped taking his medication altogether, because he believed it got in the way of his thinking. The delusions and hallucinations soon came back to haunt Nash. He had no job and he had no home. Alicia took John back into their home in 1970. Many look at Alicia as the woman who saved his life. He would have been homeless or poorly cared for in a mental institution if it wasn't for her. For several years later, Nash would roam the campus of Princeton, talking to himself and leaving cryptic messages on blackboards. He became known as the Phantom. Over the next decade, Nash very slowly began to improve. The delusions occurred less and less. Nash later describes his recovery as self-induced. He was sick of dealing with it, and all he wanted to do was get over it. Miraculously, he was able to continue his work. In 1994, at age 66, Nash received the Nobel Prize in Economics in Stockholm, Sweden, for his work on game theory. Since then, Nash has returned to his office in Princeton and continues to explore mathematics. The tremendous story of John Nash was compiled into an award-winning book in 1998 called A Beautiful Mind. The book was then made into a movie in 2001. The movie is loosely based on the book, but does focus on Nash's mathematical genius and also his battle with schizophrenia. It is safe to say that John Nash is one of the most brilliant mathematicians of the 20th century.